It has been quite a year for Pakistan's military. It claims to have downed Indian jets with the help of Chinese technology in May. And Pakistan's government signed a defense pact with Saudi Arabia. But at home, the military is being fiercely challenged by a relentless and a deadly insurgency, mainly in the province of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. Footage like this, funerals of security personnel killed in militant attacks, is now a common sight on news channels. Islamabad blames the Pakistani militant group Taliban Pakistan or TTP for most of the violence. Islamabad says the militants enter Pakistan through its long border with neighboring Afghanistan. Pakistan and independent UN experts say TTP fighters are receiving training and support in Afghanistan, something the Taliban-run government denies. Just this year, Pakistan has lost about 1,000 security forces and hundreds of civilians in terrorism incidents. This month, Pakistan retaliated by carrying out attacks deep inside Afghanistan's territory, including the capital Kabul and the province of Kandahar, claiming it was targeting militants. Afghanistan responded with its own cross-border attacks. After dozens of people and security personnel were killed or injured on both sides, a ceasefire agreement has been reached between the two governments. But can this ceasefire reduce the militancy threat for Pakistan?
For the Taliban in Afghanistan, although they've become the government, they have social bonds, they have camaraderie, they have ideological alignment, and they have a lot of friendship with the Pakistani Taliban. And now the Taliban in Afghanistan are being asked, the government of the Taliban, to crack down on these Pakistani Taliban that are responsible for attacks in Pakistan. And I feel that it's going to be very, very difficult for the Afghan Taliban to go against their comrades.
Pakistan says the ceasefire agreement with the Afghan Taliban hinges on their ability to rein in militant attacks. But history suggests the Afghan Taliban are unlikely to turn on their militant allies.
Now, Elizabeth Threlkeld is a senior fellow and director of the South Asia programme at the Stimson Center. That's a think tank focusing on international peace and security. Welcome to DW. Help us to understand. There are Taliban forces in Afghanistan and Pakistan with strong ethnic and ideological ties. Pakistan accuses Afghanistan's Taliban government of supporting their, can I say, brothers in Pakistan, which, of course, Afghanistan denies. So given those strong ties, how plausible is that denial?
I think there, as your reporter was indicating, are well-documented signs that the TTP, the Pakistani Taliban, is indeed receiving support and a safe haven across the border in Afghanistan. And that is deeply frustrating to Pakistan, which finds itself facing an insurgency or militants that do benefit from that safe haven. Now, certainly the Afghan Taliban has denied this. They repeatedly say that Afghan soil is not being used to target neighboring countries. And we'll see coming out of the ceasefire where there was an agreement that neither side would take hostile actions against the other or support groups carrying out attacks against Pakistan. That was a positive development, but I think there's rightly some skepticism about how durable this agreement might be.
And is it possible or indeed credible that TTP units are operating from Afghanistan without the knowledge or collusion of the Taliban government?
Yeah, so this is a difficult question in terms of the Taliban government's capacity and their political will to take action against the TTP. So this question of how much command and control does the Afghan Taliban have over the Pakistani Taliban? It's, of course, difficult to say. This is a complex environment with a lot of different factors. But we have seen in the past, for example, in response to previous rounds of negotiation or when Pakistan has sought to put pressure on the Taliban, or indeed when China has, there have been moments where attacks have gone down, at least temporarily. And so some analysts suggest that means that the Afghan Taliban does have some ability to influence the Pakistani Taliban's behavior. I think the challenge, though, is that is almost certainly not complete control. And so the TTP themselves are independent actors here. And notably, in Doha, it was only the Afghans and the Pakistanis who came together. And so watching what happens within the TTP now, I think is going to be a key question.
Right. So what leverage then does Pakistan have realistically over Afghanistan on this issue?
It's a great question, and one that in some ways takes us back to the days of the war in Afghanistan, when the leverage that Pakistan had over Afghanistan was critical from the perspective of U.S. warfighters. And we saw this with the border closures that Pakistan routinely carried out in those days and indeed has come back to now. So key border crossings. Afghanistan is a landlocked country, and Pakistan represents its best access for trade and transit, access to the sea. Pakistan has also been cracking down on Afghan refugees and sending Afghans who in some cases have lived in Pakistan for decades back to Afghanistan to try to exert some pressure on the Taliban. And of course, Pakistan is taking kinetic action. Pakistan conducted airstrikes in Kabul and Kandahar in ways that are intended to send a message to Afghanistan here. And so Pakistan does have some leverage, but it's going to be very, very challenging to convert that leverage into a meaningful continued ceasefire here, given the dynamics at play.
Right. And so if we look at it from the other side, is there any downside for the Taliban government in Afghanistan? Is there any downside for them for the TTP to continue operating in Pakistan? I'm thinking in terms of a desire perhaps to re-enter the international community, needing help and assistance from external actors.
Yeah, this is certainly a concern, not just within Pakistan, but more broadly. Counterterrorism is often held up as one of those pillars that members of the international community refer to repeatedly in talks with the Afghan Taliban about things like diplomatic recognition. Now, at this point, only Russia has offered full recognition of the Taliban. Countries like China, for example, do have a Taliban ambassador in Beijing. India, similarly, is looking to ramp up its representation. And so while CT is a concern, members of the international community don't necessarily have a great deal of leverage there, as we've seen so far play out.
Thanks for talking us through that, Elizabeth. Elizabeth Threlkeld from the Stimson Center. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Now let's bring in DW reporter Beenish Javed, who's been covering this story for a while now. Beenish, why is it that the Afghan Taliban find it so hard to break with their brothers in arms?
So, Gerhard, Afghan Taliban don't see TTP or Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan as a terrorist group. Rather, they see them as an entity that's very close to their identity. Remember that during the 20-year war, TTP provided active support to Afghan Taliban, such as sending even recruits to Afghan Taliban when they were waging war against US and NATO troops. They share the same ethnicity, same language, they have familial ties. Pakistani Taliban have pledged allegiance to the leader of Afghan Taliban, Haibatullah Akhundzada. So they have such close social and historical ties, which makes it very difficult for the Afghan Taliban to completely cut their ties with the Pakistani Taliban.
But why is Pakistan, on the other hand, struggling so badly to contain this insurgency?
So there are multiple reasons, but one reason, and an important one, is that Pakistan's military is completely stretched. And we can explain this with the help of this map. If we can see this map, so Pakistan, Gerhard, we have talked mostly about Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, the northwestern province of Pakistan, that Pakistan is facing active insurgency there. But Pakistan is also facing an insurgency in the province of Balochistan. And both these provinces, Khyber Pakhtunkhwa and Balochistan, they border Afghanistan. Now, Pakistani military says that even though Pakistan has fenced majority of the border, they say that still militants infiltrate, they cross border freely, and then also experts say that these militants also enjoy some domestic help and support from some people or some groups within Pakistan. And Pakistan has been unable to break those ties. Also, Pakistan just had a conflict with India in May. So all forces are also active on the eastern border, now also with the western border. So the military is completely stretched in fighting the insurgency and keeping its forces alert on the borders as well.
Now, tell us about the human cost of this insurgency.
The human cost has been incredibly high. For example, Gerhard, when I go to Pakistan, in any major city you will see pictures of Pakistani police officers, Pakistani security forces that were killed in militant attacks. It's very visible on your face. There are many streets in Pakistan that are named in the name of those officers or those soldiers that were killed in this insurgency. Just this year, 1,000 security forces have been killed. So their families, 1,000 in militant attacks. So their families are suffering. On top of that, around 500 civilians have been killed. So the human cost is incredibly high. And also when military carries out military operations in the border regions, sometimes in those attacks, civilians also get killed. So that is another problem that Pakistan is facing. And then also there is sometimes resentment from the local people against this military operations. And thousands of people have also been displaced because of this military operation. So this insurgency is bearing a huge cost on Pakistan.
Now, Pakistan has carried out airstrikes in Afghanistan. Is that the right response to this?
Pakistan has its own reasons why they carried out these airstrikes. But Gerhard, we have been covering this recent conflict the last week, and all sound bites that I have been hearing from the Afghans, they are very angry because they say in these airstrikes, civilians were killed. And that basically is also, now they're also backing their Afghan Taliban government because they're angry at the loss of the civilians. I personally think that Afghanistan, all these regional countries, instead of fighting, they ultimately have to find a political solution. In the use of power, use of force in the long run never works. Civilians get killed. It's a huge cost. And then if we want to win the hearts and minds of people in the region, and Pakistan and Afghanistan have such a close history together, it's never a good strategy to use a force on civilians.
Thank you very much, Beenish Javed, there for us.